Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session with Remi. You're welcome, regardless of ethnicity, gender identity, ability, or disability. It's a very inclusive and safe space. And we always try to make space for others and just be yourself, whether it be by writing a quirky nickname or renaming yourself, keeping your camera on or off. And we always try to make it very welcoming and very embracing. And it's very safe to the extent that you can just express yourself. And we always try to make everyone feel comfortable, no matter what we talk about. And whenever we have breakout rooms, there's always a quiet room. You can always write to me in the chat or write to Remy or Christina. And you can also message us privately. And I hope you enjoy this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Noreen. Appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. I know we've got folks who are trickling in, so let me very slowly begin an introduction and then we'll start today's session. The chat is open and I've got it open here as well. My name is Remi Kalir. I currently work at Duke University as an associate director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. I am moving a little slowly today. I'm 8 days out of unexpected hernia surgery, and so my mind is my mind's awake. My body is slowly waking up from all of that, and so bear with me if some of this, seems to get pieced together. We scheduled this months and months ago, and I was like, oh, this is some coincidental scheduling. So in any case, I'm here. Thank you for being here as well. As we start today, this is going to be a lovely hour together. I hope that I don't hear the sound of my voice too much, which is to say that you're very welcome to come off mic. You're very welcome to just jump in. You're very welcome to interrupt me. And you're also very welcome to kind of blow up the chat a little bit. And so if folks want to say hey and maybe introduce themselves, tell us who you are, maybe why you're here or where you're coming from, that would be very welcome and lovely. And maybe just take a moment to say hello, or again, to come off mic and just say, hey. Well, Alan, and I'm a fan in return. It's good to it's good to have you here. Yeah, welcome, folks. Thank you. Let me, while we're saying hello in the chat, let me get the presentation deck that I've prepared up for folks, and y'all can also maybe give me a quick thumbs up if you can see this as well. Yeah, wonderful. Good. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Come back in here. Okay, we've got folks from, looks like all over the place. Okay, different states. Thank you, folks. Thank you so much. Well, again, please keep the introductions coming. Again, the chat is open. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the chat. Again, please bring your questions and your comments forward. We're going to, again, pretty quickly move into what I hope is a discussion over the next even just a few minutes here, which is that I'm really pleased to share a project that some colleagues and I have put together over really the past few academic years. And it's called Pressing Prompts. It's the iteration of an AI ethics learning toolkit that's coming out of Duke, but is now living relatively independently. Before I get into any of that, though, again, I'd love to start, first of all, by sharing this deck. Wow, it's great to see so many people jumping into the session so far. If you want to access my slides, I know this session is being recorded, but if you want to also view the slides, because I'm moving through at a different pace, you want to look back, whatever it may be, these slides are open. That's a short link. So if you just go to duke.is/Kalir, my last name, and then MYFest26, you'll find a copy of all these slides. Christina, thank you. It's in the chat. All right. We are organized. We're up and running. I love it. But I wanted to begin with an open discussion. And again, folks are very welcome. I don't want to be the lone voice just reading reading from the chat and revoicing your ideas. Um, I'd love to begin with a discussion, broadly speaking. I think we're, 3+ years into um, what some of us might call a pretty notable turn towards the prevalence, the, you know, presence of AI, both generative, agentic, and otherwise in our lives. And I'd love to just start with a real big picture conversation, which is what are some ways that you've found AI to be helpful, whether that's in a professional or personal context? And perhaps what are some ways that you have found AI to be harmful? And I'm not here to judge. I'd love, again, to hear some perhaps divergent perspectives on either of these questions as we begin today. Oops. Please
I'll
just jump in.
start.
Jump
I'll
in.
start by saying something. One way that I'm finding I'm a reading and writing specialist and also working with AI. So in the context of ELA and the reading and writing classroom, I'm finding one way AI to be really helpful in terms of differentiation with English language learners and and readers who are not quite at grade level. I especially focus a lot on K through 12. And so in that way, it's really helpful to make sure everyone's kind of at their reading level and helping them move forward. But then on the other hand, there is this harmful element where if you maybe differentiate it a little too much or keep them there, the question is still how long do you keep a reader there without helping them move on to the next reading level? And so there's this concern of like keeping them, helping them, and making them understand the reading. But then there's also this harmful side of maybe keeping them behind. And so it's constantly worse. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out what is that magic formula where I can help, but also like push forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
I like that you started with that, Shireen. It reminds me that I always felt like if faculty assign students readings in college that are above their level, then students are totally justified in using AI to help them with that reading as they would have used other ways to help themselves. But I think what ends up happening sometimes is that they do that anyway, regardless of the reading, and then they miss out on some nuance and things like that. So I think AI helps make some things easier, mostly does some things faster. So if there's something I need to get done, but I don't want to do it, sometimes AI is helpful. I'm a computer scientist who hasn't done coding in like over 20 years. So if I want to create something interactive for my students, I can easily use AI to code that. But I find AI to be harmful in many more ways than it's helpful. I mean, generative AI specifically, right? In the way that it makes us prioritize speed over just taking our time with things. And I'm very worried about the way I see students turning to AI for help on things that they could have turned to a human being and have a relationship with that human being, whether for therapy or even like as a tutor instead of going to a teaching assistant or going to office hours or things like that. That's the thing I think I'm most concerned about, not just the cognitive offloading, but someone was saying, I think yesterday, social offloading, like even losing those social relationships and skills. That's I'm really concerned about that. And I'm not even going into the environmental harms and the biases and all of that. I'm just talking about AI use directly by students and myself.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there. And we're getting some folks in chat as well. Thank you.
Kind of related to how students use AI and in order to learn things. What I've noticed is when my students have voiced frustration when AI leads them down the wrong path. And then instead of trying to figure out what is the correct path or trying to figure out like what's the thought process in order to solve a problem, what they do is they ask for more problems. And it's getting to the point of almost they feel like they can learn like AI learns, almost like if you just feed them more data. then they should be able to learn the way AI does. And I think that's a little bit of a harmful kind of way of conceptualizing learning.
Yeah. First of all, folks, thank you. My goodness, we're already getting into such a rich discussion. And I should, say from the jump here that the way that I frame this opening question and the way that we're approaching this opening discussion, I hope actually moves us away from dichotomous thinking. That's often not a great place to be. I know that in asking questions about things being either helpful or harmful, that can suggest that maybe some of us or our colleagues or our students may be more inclined towards the enthusiastic kind of boosterism around generative AI hype. And at the same time, some of us may be more inclined towards the quite, uh, you know, pessimistic, if not overtly critical ways of thinking about AI doomerism, as some folks are describing it. And those are very, I think, well, for a bald person, I'll just say a very bald perspective on things that doesn't often, again, capture the nuance of many of the practices that so many of you are speaking to. And over the last few years, I've found that, at least for me and my colleagues, including some of the folks at Duke who I'm currently working with, we're really in a much messier middle right now. And we're really trying to more um, generously understand our relationship to this technology, even if we choose to reject it, or even if we choose to embrace it in certain kinds of ways. And so I'll say that in being invited to talk with all of you, and again, Maha, thank you for reaching out and inviting this session. I'm not showing up as the same Remi today that I was a year ago when I gave a different MYFest presentation. Had nothing to do with AI, by the way. I'm just saying that a year ago, my relationship, I'll just say personally, and I'm speaking now only for myself and not for anybody else associated with this project, but I was far more critical of some of the broad social and political concerns surrounding AI, and I still hold those beliefs dearly. And today, it would be disingenuous if I didn't also say that I'm using agentic AI 4, 5, 8 hours a day, depending on what I do every day now, as a part of my workflow. And I'm really trying to balance now how I show up to all of you honestly and transparently about my relationship to algorithms, my use of certain technologies, and how those technologies allow us to do certain kinds of work, even while holding fast to perhaps a certain set of values. Or again, maybe not. Maybe those values are shifting in real time. And one of the things I've always valued about this community is my ability to show up and have these really rich conversations with folks. And so I just want to mention that because in again, moving through this initial even discussion, and if you have additional thoughts about how AI again may be helpful or harmful, please continue to again add them to the chat or just interrupt me. But I wanted to frame some of where my colleagues and I have been over the last few months with this quote. Now, again, some of us may have very conflicting opinions about Anthropic. Again, this is not meant to be a full endorsement of this quote here, but this is, for me, a shift that has been quite marked in my relationship to, in this case, agentic AI over really the last 6 months now, which is that for quite a few years, particularly following the wide release, let's say, of ChatGPT, many of us were framing our use of AI around chatting with a bot, right? I have some concern, or students might be doing something, or I want to think through a particular problem, or again, to the concerns that Maha mentioned a moment ago, offloading therapy or offloading friendship or offloading cognition to chatbots is kind of captured in the first aspect of this quote. When we talk to a chatbot, you're there in the conversation, you're going back and forth with it. But it's the second part of the quote that has really changed my work as, dare I say, an educator, and also, I think, just a thinker over the last 6 months, which is that an agent, or in this case, agentic AI, is something where you can give it some instruction and it goes away and it does stuff for you. It's kind of like working with a colleague. Now, I would not say that in this case, Claude or Claude Code is a colleague of mine, although I'm increasingly convinced that it is a collaborator. And one of the outcomes of that work is what I'm going to share with you today, which is intended to be intentionally critical. And so, in setting up this shift in work and a shift in how the project that you're about to see even exists, I want to walk through, even just very briefly, the shift that my colleagues and I have navigated over the last 6 months, which is that for quite a few years, again, since 2022 into 2023, that initial generative AI arrival and disruption was often characterized by, again, chatting with bots or concerns about whatever so-called AI literacy might mean. I could rant a lot about what I don't believe that means or why that may be irrelevant. But in any case, it captured a lot of our discourse. And we then, of course, were using software as a service. We were continuing to say, what can these things that I am perhaps subscribing to or using do for me, do for my work, do for my colleagues? And yes, to the concerns that were mentioned a moment ago, we then began to think about things like cognitive offloading. All of this is very true. And again, for me, just to say that if you've been perhaps messing around with, playing around with, experimenting with agentic AI, this is what the last 6 months for me have actually felt like. I'm now collaborating with a co-designer. I have, in this case, a very savvy, responsive, and always on collaborative co-designer that I can turn to. I've, again, primarily been using Claude Code. That requires of me not AI literacy. AI literacy for me has nothing to do with anything I'm discussing today or even my use of agentic AI. Rather, I need disciplinary expertise and deep judgment. Judgment about what to use these tools for and judgment about what not to use these tools for. And this has actually allowed me and my colleagues to think about software and the development of software and the development of resources as a practice. And it has been notable that we can now build tools and resources and software on our own because of our use of particular AI technologies, which then leads from a concern about cognitive offloading, which is again still very much there, but to maybe the other side of that coin, which is when can we use these tools for what we might call focused building or focused designing? And so this to me has
Remi,
opened up.
could you explain? Remi, could
Yes.
you explain that, the difference? I mean, to me, agentic AI sounds like not even more offloading, cognitive and process offloading.
I
What's
mean,
focused building?
this is again how where I've developed technical skills in the last 6 months that I had not used for nearly 20 years. And so I appreciate that I can ask, let's say, an agentic system like Claude Code to create things for me that I may not fully comprehend. But I can also create workflows and processes in that then allow me to build new skills, that allow me to actually learn what it is that I'm doing so that I can then, explain the nuances of showing you the project that we're going to look at today and say, I'm fully confident that it's gone through a accessibility audit in these ways technically because I was able to walk a system through those types of checks. Or I can help create, certain types of resources in certain types of ways because I now understand the kinds of questions to ask of agentic systems. And I have to say, this is really surprising to me as somebody who's been so deeply skeptical of these systems for so long. I was having a conversation to your point a moment ago, Maha, about offloading with my boss actually just maybe 2 days ago now. It's all still a little blurry because of this surgery recovery, but we began to identify where in our team we don't want to offload to agentic AI because it adds to too much abstraction. And we're getting better with that. We're getting better at finding ways where these kinds of tasks or these kinds of requests, it's the snake eating its own tail. It's that this gets blurry, and then the copy of the blurry gets blurrier, and then the double copy of the other blurry gets even blurrier and blurrier. And then within 2 to 3 to 4 recursive rounds of that, you no longer understand your ground truth. Alternatively, there are ways of building, as we've been finding, technical systems, technical workflows, technical products, or even something like pressing prompts that are quite sophisticated in terms of how they are technically created, but they require real judgment about how we understand our capabilities, our insights, and our skills. And this has been so strange for me, frankly. Again, having been critical of these technologies for so many years, and yet knowing that the kind of judgment calls that don't lead towards more offloading, to your question, Maha, but actually lead towards more insight have been quite shocking, frankly. And so again, I have to wonder, and this is why it's good to be in this community of folks who've known me for a very long time and who've always held me to a very high standard of accountability. Have I really lost the thread? Or is this another way of thinking about some aspect of the kind of DIY-esque ethos that many of us have cared about for a long time? I'm not entirely sure. And there is, I think, a separate argument to make. And now you really got me rambling about how we choose to use these tools and certain tools in the first place. But in this case, this is my university now provisioning me and my colleagues with licenses to do and build and create and share. And that's why we're in this conversation today. So I hope that captures Maha somewhat. But you're right, and that's the concern is, do we want this? And then I think the question is speed. As you look at what we'll dig into today, how quickly do we build these types of things is, I think, something else to really, really unpack as well. So I think the question is, yes, like, can you do this critically, right? To this point of like, here's this agentic shift that I've described here. I could keep rambling about it. I've actually written quite a few blog posts and done some other totally separate things about this over the last bit of time, but let's keep moving. Can this be critical? And so two very dear colleagues and I, whose names and pictures I'm about to show you in just a second here, we've created pressing prompts. Now, again, this is actually a project that's nearly 2.5 years old. It was created with undergraduate students originally. It was, again, created at Duke University. I'll read the quote in a second here, but my two key collaborators in this case, and they had scheduling conflicts today, and I'm very much representing, in this case, a team effort. Hannah Rozier, who's a librarian at Duke Libraries, and she's in charge of all kinds of amazing things, including the AI and education work that's happening at Duke Libraries. And then my amazing boss, AVP of Academic Innovation at Duke's CTL, Dr. Arya Chernik, just incredible mentor and an incredible friend. Two very critical educators who, along with some undergraduate students, we created Duke University's AI Ethics Learning Toolkit. And that's been one of our most popular resources on campus and online for over a year now. And when we encountered this agentic opportunity, we said, how might we iterate this project and make it perhaps even snazzier, even more interactive, even more whatever it might be? We've rebranded it. We've made it completely open now, and it's called Pressing Prompts. And ultimately, we believe it's a professional responsibility of ours, of me, of Hannah, of Arya, of others, to engender thoughtful discussion with our students about AI, and that Pressing Prompts can help you, us, all of us, and our students spark and sustain those conversations. Because as we believe, after all, the most crucial questions about AI aren't technical, but human. And so what is Pressing Prompts? Let's look at it. I'm going to briefly describe it, and then I'm going to slowly shut up so that y'all can just dig in and have a look at this thing. We currently have 11 topics in Pressing Prompts that are clustered in 3 broad categories. Those broad categories are trust and truth, power and access, and then also self and society. And so these are the questions that, again, we believe you should be asking. Questions like, can we trust AI? Who benefits from AI? To the question again that Maha mentioned a few moments ago, is AI a friend? Can we go forward with that kind of social offloading in addition to cognitive offloading? There's a question about that. Does AI harm critical thinking? And so we've curated and researched and built student-centered learning activities around these 3 clusters, and these 11 topics. And for every one of these topics, you have some kind of background information, a kind of introduction. There's a set of learning objectives that you can bring into your course. There's conversation starters that you can use with students. These are very easy entry, low barrier ways to just spark a debate. There are these very richly designed, we did some really intense learning design work around student-centered activities that can be used both in a face-to-face and or online settings. There are different modalities that you can have a look at there. There's a whole layer of learning notes. Thank you so much. Yes, we're about to jump in. For instructors to look at, there are discipline-specific extensions and activity resources and also some connected topics. The last thing I'll mention, and I don't need to get into it because I really want to respect our time, there's also a pretty cool technical feature that allows you to create essentially your own curated playlist of all of these resources. You can go through all the activities and essentially bring together what you think is most useful for you, for your students, for your course context. And you can export all of that, whether it's as a PDF, copy, links out, or as a markdown file if you want to bring it into another system. And there's no login ever required. There's no data collected on our end. There are very strong privacy protections. You can export this whenever you want to, and it's all openly accessible, right? So with that having been said, yes, Maha, thank you. The link is in the chat, and there's also, in this case, a QR code here. And so we're going to just dig in. We're just going to have a look. And we can either continue to hang out as a whole group. We can also begin to kind of move into some small groups here. Let me kind of tee up what I hope can be a pretty, again, interactive series of explorations and conversations over just the next half hour here, which is that the first activity is really to just explore. And again, I want to kind of follow, whatever, y'all prefer. If you want to move into smaller groups, if you want to just kind of stay here and just kind of speak from and think through and be here in one community, that's great. But I'd love to hear, like, first of all, as you see these topics and these questions, like, what are those questions that resonate? What topics are you curious about and why? Maybe you want to pick a few to really kind of dig deep into. And then if we either keep it in a big group or we move into smaller groups, maybe we want to begin just some initial discussion around just what are you seeing? What are you curious about? And why do you think that these topics and questions perhaps either matter to you or matter to your students? And I can also continue to provide background about any of the particular topics that you want to dig into. But yeah, if folks want to, otherwise, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I was suggesting, I think breakouts would be nice so that people can have conversations as they explore the resource. But while we're away, maybe the recording could keep going and some of the hosts and you could have a conversation while you showcase the site. So
That's
people
great.
watching the
Yeah,
recording get to see that.
sure, absolutely. If folks want to do that, should we take that? Like, there's another opportunity here to do, maybe we can have a check-in and then we can kind of swap back. So maybe like, is like 7 to 8 to 10 minutes maybe okay?
Hmm?
And then we'll kind of
Sounds
swing
good.
back in here to the group. Does that sound all right?
Yes, sounds great.
So these
It's okay with
questions,
everyone?
again, yeah, and if you want to, again, have an eyeball on these questions, again, the slides are available so that you can keep your eyeballs on these questions and the site, and then I'll do a little bit of talk through. I'm happy to follow, again, the lead in group size as well, whatever I guess makes sense.
So I just wanted to ask for the breakout rooms, how many should I make? Would you like people to be in twos or threes?
Freeze session, just in case somebody's internet's not good.
Okay.
All right. Enjoy your breakout rooms. I'll be here chatting about things generally for the recording, and then we'll
So,
reconvene and check in about 10 minutes.
okay, so 10 minutes for the breakout rooms or 9?
And let's do 9. 9. Let's be odd. It's always good to be odd.
Yes. Okay. So I think people can go to rooms. I think.
I don't think you've opened them.
Right.
If you need help with bring to that too.
The folks are selecting rooms, so jump into a room just so you can meet some friends and have a
Yes,
conversation.
I wasn't sure should I make it random or people could choose.
Pick a
So
room or stay here, and we'll just kind of we'll roll with it. So while folks are selecting their rooms, I'm gonna come over here, and I'm assuming that on the recording side of things, you can now see the live site. Is that correct? Good. Okay. Um, so I'll just mention that again. If you are watching this recording now at a future date, hello, future viewers. Thank you for being here a half hour in. Um, this is the Pressing Prompt site. It's openly accessible. Again, as I was mentioning in the presentation, the landing homepage is organized again by three broad clusters, and then in this case, all of the respective topics. And if you are curious about a given question, let's say, who builds our AI, which is concerned with aspects of, let's say, hidden labor and ghost work, you can click on that topic and it brings you into this, which again, there's a custom illustration, an introductory quote, a little bit of background information with some key ideas here. And then it's set up again to help instructors scaffold these types of deeply enriching conversations and activities with students. And so you'll see learning objectives. You'll also see some activities, all of which can be complemented by conversation starters. These activities are all expandable with, again, a lot of detail here about both in-class and online versions. You can see that there are also resources associated with all the various activities. This is an online activity that has a no AI option. So if you don't want to use AI in any way to engage in this activity, you can. It's all again explained here with the activity objectives and the activity steps. Something else that is an important feature of this for these various activities is that if you are an instructor and you plan on using this in your courses, you can toggle on what we call our learning notes. This is essentially like a pedagogical layer of guidance. So you can turn those on, and it gives you a little bit of additional explanation here as an instructor. And then when you get into these various activities, you'll see that there are little learning note additions with all of the various activities. So you have, for example, a tip like, hey, if for a larger class, you could use something like WooClap or a shared document for this type of share out as a debrief. Or in this class about mapping AI's labor supply chain, you can see there's a learning note here about this activity working well as a culminating exercise after the first two activities have established foundational knowledge. So these learning notes, which also include, in this case, grading criteria, if you're inclined to assess any of this, is essentially an additional pedagogical layer of guidance that our team built in to this resource that, again, you can just turn on and off as you move through this resource. And there are some discipline-specific extensions here if you want to look for things that are specific to your given domain. In this case, we've got disciplinary extensions for economics, language and linguistics, data science and global health and sociology, and then all of the various resources that are associated with this, all of which are linked and then can be, of course, accessed here via the site. And so you have a kind of standalone cohesive topic. This represents, again, any of the 11 that are, again, on the full site. The last thing I'll mention technically, which I mentioned briefly in the presentation, I'll just mention quickly here, and then we can just have a continued conversation, is there's this cool feature called building a playlist, which we now can look across the site's various activities. So all of, let's say, the conversation starters. Like, here's a conversation starter. How might generative AI unintentionally reinforce harmful stereotypes or deepen social inequalities? Can you think of examples? That's a really quick, short, nice way of sparking discussion with students. It's in the topic about, is AI biased? And if I really like that conversation starter and I want to maybe take it with me without, again, no logging in, no concerns about privacy, no data collected, nothing required, I can just say, oh, that's a really nice conversation starter. I'm going to add it to my playlist, and I can get a little notification that it's been added. Maybe I want to keep browsing through here. Here's another conversation starter. What does critical thinking mean to you? And do you think AI will become capable of critical thinking? Or is it something uniquely human? That's a cool conversation starter. I'm going to add that to my playlist too. Now I've got 2 items in my playlist. I can not only add in the conversation starters, I can browse through all of the more robust student-centered learning activities. In this case, here's a activity that's actually about creating a disinformation campaign. It's part of the topic related to, does AI spread mis and disinfo? So maybe I want to add that activity to my playlist. And finally, again, I can do this with all of the disciplinary extensions as well. Maybe I'm interested in art history. Can AI image generators create art? Why or why not? And that's, again, part of the topic related to, do we even need AI? And so I can build this, again, so-called playlist. I can then either view it by clicking on it here, or you can see in the top right corner of the site itself, there's a little indicator that my playlist has 4 items. I can go there, and this is my playlist. Now, again, my being no tracking of any information, but in the browser right now, it's been organized for me. And I can either download all this information as a markdown file, which I can then take with me, or I can just copy the links to these respective items, activities, resources, or I can actually create a PDF of this if I wanted to actually take it and use it as a resource elsewhere. Again, this requires no logging in, no information, no inclusion to any user privacy, and is again entirely openly accessible. And having built one of these playlists, I can of course take items off or entirely clear the playlist. And so it's just a simple technical feature. This gets back to the question that Maha and Alan were really kind of pressing me on earlier, speaking of pressing prompts, which is like, do we need to create things faster? And how do we use these technologies in ways that, again, allow us to do things that maybe we either could do before or we maybe couldn't completely do ourselves, or maybe we can do in new ways? And our team at one point thought, how do we let people take some of this with them in other ways, in ways that respects their privacy, in ways that kind of feels low barrier, and then allows us to do so in a way that keeps the information architecture of our site organized and coherent. And it became this playlists feature, which was actually one of the more technical, from just technical development, one of the more sophisticated aspects of what we built. And here it is. And so I can explain that now. I don't believe it's entirely associated with my cognitive offloading, again, in terms of how we think about using these agentic AI systems. And it was, to me, a fun challenge. How do I, in terms of creating an openly accessible public resource that is actually quite critical about AI, make use of generative AI to then build an interesting technical feature like, let's say, these playlists. So anyways, I'm already, again, getting a little sick and tired of hearing myself speak. So for those folks who are hanging out here, where do we want to keep taking things? Oh, we're already breaking up. We're
I
coming
know
up.
the breakout rooms are.
What's on your mind? What's going on?
Did you, Noreen, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they are going to close and
They're closing soon.
they're
Okay.
automatically
In
closing.
less than a minute, yes, but you
Okay.
can go ahead.
No, it's not. That's fine. I'll swing back here. But very happy to quickly address any other thoughts or questions that folks.
Well, I'm particularly curious. I know you don't have time to explain it, but I'm particularly curious how you did the playlist. Does it
Yeah.
disappear if I clear
Once
my
you,
cache or?
yeah, once you close the browser window, it's gone.
Ah, that's okay.
It's
That's
totally
good. I
gone.
mean, it's
Yeah.
privacy preserving, so that's quite
I should
useful.
mention, yeah, since we're doing it, I know I'm sharing screen here. We have a pretty strong privacy policy.
Oh, cool.
I'll drop it in the chat here and we can talk about it more later. But I mean, there's no browser storage, there's no account
Nice.
ever, there's no tracking in any kind of way, right? And
Visitor
so,
session only. Yeah.
right. And so then you can create one of these playlists, but the minute you go away, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Folks, welcome back.
That's
I know that was probably,
awesome.
yeah, all right. I'm not talking. What y'all think about?
I love discovering like that some of the activities you're explaining how to do it online and how to do it in person, and then how to do the same exercise with a no AI alternative, which I think is great for developing critical AI literacy for very young people, like children, where you don't want them to get onto the AI
Wait,
necessarily.
Nat, can you guys, because we were literally just talking about that point, how can you do it without the AI and children? But we didn't
Yeah.
have the answer. Can you guys have do the prompts have an answer to that? How to do it
The
without?
one, yeah, the activities Remi's colleagues and he created already has that. So for example, if you want to teach people about bias in AI images, instead of having them generate the images, you can pre-generate the images yourself and
Hmm.
show them or model it for
I
them, but not
see.
have
Yes.
them have to
But
do
not
it.
have them actually do it. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
You may
I mean,
have
even
noticed.
with undergrads, I model for them the process so that they learn the way I do it. Now I don't need to do that anymore because undergrads tell us they know how to do this. But like in the beginning, when they didn't know how to use AI, I would show them on my screen first. So with younger children, I wouldn't let them then do it themselves. I just get them to call out what they want to do or whatever. But I mean, I love that they have that in the
Thank
website
you.
already.
Yeah, thank you. This is a strong commitment on behalf of, again, a lot of the learning design folks that our team has worked with, and certainly Hannah and Aria. And I having these no AI options. So again, as I'm sharing screen here, I believe this is Maha, the particular topic and activity that you were referring to, but here's the is AI biased topic. And the activities, as you may note here, two of the three have no AI options. So there's no AI involved in the classroom activities
Mm.
as students are engaging in this learning. And we explain that here in this kind of additional call out of the information. Um, and so again, I don't take it for granted the irony of having told you I'm using agentic AI to create a resource that you may use with your students, in which case we are now advocating that you not use AI. I understand that there's again quite a bit of, potential contradiction there. But yes, thank you for mentioning that that is again an option for some of these activities.
Can
By the
you?
way, I don't think there's a contradiction. There's a difference between a person who already knows how to do stuff, who then uses AI and can assess and have that judgment, versus people who are still developing that judgment. So I let my students use AI too, but I want them to develop the judgment first rather than just use it without thinking. And then they have to make those decisions of when to use it and when not to use it, given that they have all the information that they need and they're aware of the limitation. You know what I mean? And you are aware of all these things. So when someone like you is using AI, I'm not worried. I'm not thinking, oh, Remy's gone crazy, because I know you've been through that thought process and you're aware of all these things, and then you're making a conscious, you are an agent. I hate that the term agentic AI gets in the way of human agency, but you are a human agent who is able to use AI without letting AI inhabit you. But with young people, I worry that they're not mature enough yet sometimes.
How do we create future Ramis?
Wow. Yeah, again, maybe not future me's, but yes, indeed, yes. Like I appreciate this. This is this is, I think, also one of our concerns as well, right? Is how do we get the young people in our lives, whether they're our students in our classes, undergraduate, graduate even, or I've got a 7-year-old son who knows nothing about AI, or at least I don't think he knows much, but how do we develop these dispositions and develop enough lived wisdom and lived curiosity to not offload many of the, again, and dip into the many of the concerns that we're all discussing. But for other folks, maybe from who haven't we heard from yet, like what else did you notice in the resource, or what else, again, are you curious about, or were you seeing that really resonates with your practice?
I can't find a hand to raise my hand, so I'm just going to jump in.
Please, please.
Great session, and thank you for everything, for like the discussion and community. I appreciate it. I just wanted to share, I'm a doctoral candidate, and I wanted to share something that I heard from my participants in continuation of what you were saying. This particular participant is the award-winning scholar in Kenya, in a remote area. She teaches finance, and she's the coordinator for all service learning in Africa. And she was sharing her experience working with AI with her students, very big classes and student like challenging situation. She was telling me how, for example, when she wanted to teach budgeting and budget to them, started asking student to go thinking that they're teaching this to a 79-year-old grandmother and going back to old African way of budgeting, breaking a piece of wood into different pieces and all that. And after, when they actually got the concept, and she called it when the context is home, I allow them to go to AI because they all have access to AI. But then she was just saying my way of making sure that cognitive laziness that OECD mentioned doesn't happen is to make sure the context is home first. And when they have their background information without anything, that eventually improves her critical judgment. And that was very interesting. And I wanted to share that.
Thank you. Other thoughts or other reflections as we're having our first kind of dipping our toes into the pressing prompts resource?
Mm-hmm.
Into the pressing prompts resource. 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 Into the pressing prompts resource.
So, Rami, these are largely first cut generated by your agents, and then you're obviously editing. My thought, first of all, exquisitely designed, like from top to bottom. But I just think how fast everything is moving. Because like
Well,
some of these topics are changing regularly. Like, are you able
they
to
are.
to refresh?
Well, so Alan, this is good. When you say first cut, like I want to be really careful about me not assuming what you mean here. None of the content in any of this was generated by AI,
Okay,
right?
okay,
Like, so to the question that just came up in this last comment, in this case about let's say cognitive thinking, um, in this case, or again, friendship or whatever this may be. Like, does AI harm critical thinking? None of the text that you see here that was written, none of the objectives, none of these conversation starters, none of these activities were generated by AI.
yeah,
Hannah, Aria, some of our colleagues at Duke, and I should mention very importantly, two amazing undergraduate students 2 years ago now, Emma Wren and Baron Brothers. We created this content. That
okay,
was all human created, human. If there's an error, that's on us. So again, like even these opening quotes, this case from Mateo Wong, right? That's now footnoted here from, in this case, The Atlantic, or our ability to curate resources that are relevant to this. That's all us. And if you find a factual error or even a spelling error, please let me know. That's on us.
I didn't mean to say
Right? Does
it
that
looked
does that make
like,
sense, Alan?
yeah, I
Right?
didn't mean to say it
Yeah,
looked like AI. I'm just thinking like that's a hell of a lot of work to do and to
it
maintain
was.
and update.
That's yes. And I think that's the human labor piece
Yeah.
of this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The let's create these cool little graphics, let's kind of put it all together, let's build this interesting kind of web structure around it, let's make it interactive, let's layer on this playlists function.
Yeah.
That's where the agentic AI piece of this
Okay.
gave us new tools. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
But I was just thinking like some of the information, like John and I were talking about the environmental impacts and, where that is and, the understanding of it like changes constantly.
Yes. And that, Alan, and I think just the inevitable, how much do we continue to,
Yeah.
one, keep this updated? Maybe we need to include something like last updated with a date so that folks know we have a certain sense of how we're bounding the time here. And to your earlier point, and I completely agree, Alan, these initial 11 questions, when we first developed the toolkit, were actually nine, then it grew to 10. The last one that we just added a few months ago, we keep bringing up now, was the "Is AI a friend"
Hmm.
topic. It's become quite apparent that a lot of people are having rather substantive personal relationships with AI. So we added in this topic most recently. But yes, this is meant to change. And I think I know that we're starting to come up on the hour. So I should say, like in some of the debrief I was going to have us walk into, and I'd love to again hear from folks like, what is something that you liked or something that you wish was included? What are the questions? What are the pressing prompts that we're not asking, that we should be asking, that we could then start to research and develop around? Because absolutely, there are going to be new questions arising. What are the, pressing prompts, so to speak? Again, this is a very intentional double entendre. What are those pressing prompts that we should be asking? Let us know so that we can actually do the human research and the human labor and put something together so that this continues to stay relevant.
Remy, do you think the context of who you are and where you are can change all these answers? Or,
It has to. I would suggest that it has to. And I would hope, and this is where again we need to be very aware of our own biases and our own limitations, is that we are beginning to create student-centered activities that allow for that responsiveness and that variability. But you can only let me know, right? And so again, if we look at a question of is AI theft, we might look at again some of the conversation starters here. Here's a question here. How do you see the long-term impacts of generative AI on creative industries, whether that's writing, art, music, movies, or TV? I think a student's background, geography, interests, cultural gifts, and general wisdom, whether that's a 17-year-old student or a 7-year-old student, will have very different responses to that question. So I hope that that helps to answer some of what you're suggesting, that the way that we've at least initially scoped this resource allows for learners and instructors to bring themselves fully to this and see that variability reflected. But if we can do better, please let us know.
No, great. That is very important, because going back to what Maha was saying, it's great to go and talk to other people, and that's how we used to learn. But what is our context? Do we have that person? Can we go to that? What do we have the resources? So that where am I? There's so that really, what are you, a first language speaker, second language speaker? What disabilities do you have? All that changes the game.
Remi, is there a certain set of questions or like a certain prompt that you feel always keeps coming up or is the most needed?
Oh wow. I'm not I'm not entirely sure. I'll keep going back
I
again
like
to
to put people on the spot. No, I'm
this
just
is good.
kidding.
I will say that one of the first topics that, and this was again nearly 2 years ago, that again, these two amazing undergraduate students, Emma and Baron, along with me and Hannah and Aria, were just sitting around talking about what this means and how we, again, as we have a librarian and we have an academic leader and we have two undergrads at the time, a sophomore and a junior, and me, we're just sitting around having these conversations like week to week to week. And the one question that was really the root of this entire project was this one: is AI biased? And this is the question that we just kept coming back to because it reflected so many different kinds of bias that we thought of: epistemic bias, cultural bias, aspects very much again of power. And we unpack some of that here. And as we say in this introductory text, given the risks of AI bias, students should reflect on the many points at which bias can enter the AI pipeline, from what data is included to how it's labeled or filtered to what questions people ask. And we unpack notions of monoculture here, which is often a reflection of the people who look and sound like me and not perhaps the folks who are, again, the global majority of this planet that we all share. And so this was, I think, the question that many of us, at least in that initial group, me, Emma, Baron, Aria, and Hannah, we were really wrestling with this question: is AI biased? And that was really kind of one of the seeds of this entire project. So I don't know if it's for me the one that I'm always coming back to now, but it's for many, at least of us, it's where this project really began. I know we only have a few more moments, and it just feels like we're really literally just scratching the surface here. So I will, at the very least, put up these final reflective questions and just keep holding the space for your thoughts and comments. Yeah. Yeah, Miles, bring some stuff in the chat. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
And several of us have asked some questions that you might want to add, but of course, some of them might overlap. So just take a look at those and see what works.
Yeah. What is the impact of yes, the impact of AI and equity? I love that. Yes. What do transparency and accountability mean with AI? These are great questions.
I think it's an interesting question how you would just in general, what do you do with students who don't want to use AI at all? They have like a moral obligation or objection to even touching it, and you're trying to demonstrate something about AI, and that might make a fun sort of crosswalk is like all the things that you would ask them to try with AI and all the versions of the activity that they could do without it, but that somehow reveal the same insight.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is where, I'm not in the classroom right now in the kind of traditional sense. I need to be honest, a step removed now. I'm working with faculty who are, of course, teaching. I'm no longer teaching myself, though that may change soon, I hope. But in any event, at least my initial thought, John, to that observation is if a student in my class doesn't want to use AI at all, I would, of course, want to honor that very much so. I would not in any way push them towards that use. And I would also perhaps open a conversation with where, though, are little aspects of AI still creeping into aspects of our lives, like auto completing of an email or in a word processing platform or whatever that may be. In any case, it's a separate conversation, but yes, I wanna certainly respect how students show up in these conversations and these spaces in the same way that I want to show up and respect how any of us show up.
I actually think it's really interesting to take any computer-based activity and try to replicate it in physical space. I think it teaches students how the computer works at some level, even if sometimes the aspects of scale and so forth are hard to capture. So for example, recently I was teaching a class where students had to compare things. Like it was basically a game. They had to see if two fish, kind of overlapped and made a new fish. And in order to do that, you have to compare the kind of positions of whole sets of, two basically collections of fish in an aquarium. And we decided to do it with index cards. And I created basically 2 decks of index cards and then had them shuffle through one card and compare it to one card and then switch to the next card and shuffle through the second deck again. And it essentially is a loop, it's like a nested computer loop. And it actually kind of helped me understand how the process works. So I think there's value in taking any activity and kind of imagining it in a different realm. And with AI being so easily sort of mystified by its champions, doing whatever you can to demystify it, I think is helpful.
Good, I agree. And I should also say, because some folks know this very well, I'm all about note cards and drawing and all the hand-drawn, hand-creative approaches that we can bring into learning environments. So absolutely yes to that. I know we're breaking, and so again, thanks to the folks who are sharing a few more things in the chat. I know that I think a little bit of a feedback or eval form just got sent through. Christina, thanks for doing that. Yeah, feedback on the session form just got sent through. I will just say as we're starting to wrap, like I'm not hard to find. I'm pretty easily available, whether you track me down on a place like LinkedIn or over email. I'm not on social media, other spaces too much these days. But in any case, please make use of this. Please share it. Please push back on it. Please suggest what can be done to improve it. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in conversation with all of you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much,
Remi.
Remi.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.